Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome all to today's reading from Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita. We're reading from the Adi Lila at the moment. We are on chapter 2 and we'll be reading from verse 82 onward. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamham vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tatsat. Verse 82, therefore first the word Krishna appears as the subject followed by the predicate describing him as the original personality of Godhead. Verse 83, this establishes that Shri Krishna is the original personality of Godhead. The original personality of Godhead is therefore necessarily Krishna. Verse 84, had Krishna been the plenary portion and Narayan the primeval Lord, the statement of Sutta Goswami would have been reversed. Verse 85, thus he would have said, Narayan, the source of all incarnation, is the original personality of Godhead. He has appeared as Shri Krishna. Verse 86, mistakes, illusions, cheating, and defective perception do not occur in the sayings of the authoritative sages. Purport, Srimad Bhagavatam has listed the avatars, the plenary expansions of the Purush, and Lord Krishna appears among them. But the Bhagavatam further explains Lord Krishna's specific position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Since Lord Krishna is the original personality of Godhead, reason and argument establish that his position is always supreme. Had Krishna been a plenary expansion of Narayan, the original verse would have been differently composed. Indeed, its order would have been reversed. But there cannot be mistakes, illusion, cheating, or imperfect perception in the words of liberated sages. Therefore, there is no mistake in the statement that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Sanskrit statements of Srimad Bhagavatam are all transcendental sounds. Srila Vyasadeva revealed these statements after perfect realization, and therefore they are perfect. For liberated sages like Vyasadeva never commit errors in their rhetorical arrangements. Unless one accepts this fact, there is no use in trying to obtain help from the revealed scriptures. Brahma refers to false knowledge or mistakes such as accepting a rope as a snake or an oyster shell as gold. Pramad refers to inattention or misunderstanding of reality, and Viprilipsa is the cheating propensity. Karna Patva refers to the imperfectness of the material senses. There are many examples of such imperfection. The eyes cannot see that which is very distant or very small. One cannot even see his own eyelid, which is the closest thing to his eye. And if one is disturbed by disease like jaundice, he sees everything to be yellow. Similarly, the ears cannot hear distant sounds, since the personality of Godhead and his plenary portions and self-realized devotees are all transcendentally situated. They cannot be misled by such deficiencies. Verse 87, you say something contradictory and become angry when this is pointed out. Your explanation has a defect of a misplaced predicate. This is an unconsidered adjustment. Verse 88, only the personality of Godhead, the source of all other divinities, is eligible to be designated Swayam Bhagwan or the primeval Lord. Verse 89, when from one candle many others are lit, I consider that one the original. Purport, the Brahma Samhita chapter 5 verse 46 states that the Vishnu Tattva or the principle of the absolute personality of Godhead is like a lamp, because the expansions equal their origin in all respects. A burning lamp can light innumerable other lamps, and although they will not be inferior, still the lamp from which the others are lit must be considered the original. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead expands himself in the plenary forms of the Vishnu Tattva, and although they are equally powerful, the original powerful personality of Godhead is considered the source. This example also explains the appearance of qualitative incarnations like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, Shambho Stutamo Dhanatvat Kajjalmaya Sukshma Deep Shikha Sthaniyasya Natatha Samyam. The Shambhu Tattva, or the principle of Lord Shiva, is like a lamp covered with the carbon because of his being in charge of the mode of ignorance. The illumination from such a lamp is very minute, therefore the power of Lord Shiva cannot compare to that of the Vishnu principle. Verse 90. Krishna in the same way is the cause of all causes and all incarnations. Please hear another verse to defeat all misinterpretations. Verse 91 and 92. Here in Srimad Bhagavatam, 10 subjects are described: the creation of the ingredients of the cosmos, the creations of Brahma, the maintenance of the creation, special favor given to the faithful, impetuses for activity, prescribed duties for law-abiding men, a description of the incarnations of the Lord, the winding up of the creation, liberation from gross and subtle material existence, and the ultimate shelter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The 10th item is the shelter of all others. To distinguish this ultimate shelter from all other 9 subjects, the Mahajans have described these 9 directly or indirectly through prayers or direct explanations. Purport: these verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, Chapter 10, verses 1 and 2 list the 10 subject matters dealt within the text of the Bhagavatam. Of these, the 10th is the substance, and the other 9 are categories derived from the substance. These 10 subjects are listed as follows. First, Sarga, the first creation by Vishnu, the bringing forth of the 5 gross material elements, the 5 objects of sense perception, the 10 senses, the mind, the intelligence, the false ego, and the total material energy or universal form. Second, work of Brahma in producing the moving and non. Vishnu's function is more important and his glory greater than Brahma's and Lord Shiva's, for although Brahma is the creator and Shiva the destroyer, Vishnu is the maintainer. Fourth, his portion, special care and protection for devotees by the Lord. As a king maintains his kingdom and subjects, but nevertheless gives special attention to the members of his family, so the personality of Godhead gives special care to his devotees who are souls completely surrendered to him. Fifth, his uti, the urge for creation or initiative power, that is the cause of all inventions, according to the necessities of time, space, and objects. Sixth, his manvantara, the periods controlled by the manus, who teach regulative principles for living beings who desire to achieve perfection in human life. The rules of Manu, as described in the Manu Samhita, guide the way to such perfection. Verse 7, Ishanukatha, scriptural information regarding the personality of Godhead, his incarnations on earth, and the activities of his devotees. Scriptures dealing with these subjects are essential for progressive human life. Eighth, his Nirodh, the winding up of all energies employed in creation. Such potencies are emanations from the personality of Godhead, who eternally lies in the Karan ocean. The cosmic creations manifested with his breath are again dissolved in due course. Ninth is Mukti, liberation of the conditioned souls engaged by the gross and subtle coverings of the body and mind. When freed from all material affection, the soul, giving up the gross and subtle material bodies, can attain the spiritual sky in his original spiritual body and engage in transcendental loving service to the Lord in Vaikuntha Lok or Krishna Lok. When the soul is situated in his original constitutional position of existence, he is said to be liberated. It is possible to engage in the transcendental loving service to the Lord and become Jivan Mukta, a liberated soul, even while in the material body. Lastly, the 10th subject is Ashray, the Transcendence, the Samam Bonam, from whom everything emanates, upon whom everything rests, and in whom everything merges after annihilation. He is the source and support of all. The ashra is also called the Supreme Brahman, as in the Vedanta Sutra, Athato Brahma Jigyasa Janmadi Asya Yataha. Srimad Bhagavatam especially describes this Supreme Brahman as the ashray. Shri Krishna is this ashray, and therefore the greatest necessity of life is to study the science of Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam accepts Shri Krishna as the shelter of all manifestations because Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the ultimate source of everything, the supreme goal of all. Two different principles are to be considered herein, namely ashray, the object providing shelter, and ashrit, the dependents requiring shelter. The ashrit exists under the original principle, the ashray, the first 9 categories described in the first 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, from creation to liberation, including the Purush avatars, the incarnations, the marginal energy or living entities, and the external energy or material world are all ashrit. The prayers of Srimad Bhagavatam, however, aim for the ashray tattva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. The great soul expert in describing Srimad Bhagavatam have very diligently delineated the other 9 categories. Sometimes by great direct narrations and sometimes by indirect narrations such as stories. The real purpose of doing this is to know perfectly the absolute transcendence, Shri Krishna, for the entire creation, both material and spiritual, rests on the body of Shri Krishna. Verse 93, to know distinctly the ultimate shelter of everything, that be, I have described the other 9 categories. The cause for the appearance of these 9 is rightly called their shelter. Verse 94, the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, is the shelter and abode of everything. All the universes rest in his body. Verse 95, the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam reveals the 10th object, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the shelter of all surrendered souls. He is known as Shri Krishna, and he is the ultimate source of all the universes. Let me offer my obeisances unto him. Purport: this quotation comes from the Sridhar Swami's commentary on the first verse of the 10th canto, chapter 1 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Verse 96, one who knows the real feature of Shri Krishna and his 3 different energies cannot remain ignorant about him. Purport: Srila Jiva Goswami states in his Bhagavad Sandarbha that by his potencies, which act in natural sequences beyond the scope of the speculative human mind, the Supreme Transcendence, the Summum Bonum, eternally and simultaneously exists in 4 transcendental features: his personality, his impersonal effulgence, particles of his potency, the living beings, and the principal cause of all causes. The Supreme Whole is compared to the Sun, which also exists in 4 features, namely the personality of the Sun God, the glare of his glowing sphere, the sun rays inside the Sun planet, and the Sun's reflections in many other objects. The ambition to corroborate the existence of the transcendental absolute truth by limited conjectural endeavors cannot be fulfilled, because he is beyond the scope of our limited speculative minds. In an honest search for truth, we must admit that his powers are inconceivable to our tiny brains. The exploration of space has demanded the work of the greatest scientists of the world, yet there are countless problems regarding even fundamental knowledge of the material creation that bewilder scientists who confront them. Such material knowledge is far removed from the spiritual nature, and therefore the acts and arrangements of the absolute truth are beyond all doubts inconceivable. The primary potencies of the absolute nature are mentioned to be 3: internal, external, and marginal. By the acts of his internal potency, the personality of Godhead in his original form exhibits the spiritual cosmic manifestations known as the Vaikuntha Loks, which exist eternally even after the destruction of the material cosmic manifestation. By his marginal potency, the Lord expands himself as living beings who are a part of him, just as the sun distributes its rays in all directions. By his external potency, the Lord manifests the material creation just as the sun with its rays creates fog. The material creation is but a perverse reflection of the eternal Vaikuntha nature. These three energies of the Absolute Truth are also described in the Vishnu Puran, where it is said that the living being is equal in quality to the internal potency, whereas the external potency is indirectly controlled by the chief cause of all causes, Maya. The illusory nature misleads a living being as fog misleads a pedestrian by blocking off the light of the sun. Although the potency of Maya is inferior in quality to the marginal potency, which consists of the living beings who are part and parcel of the Lord, it nevertheless has the power to control the living beings, just as fog can block the actions of certain portion of the sun's rays, although it cannot cover the sun. The living beings covered by the illusory energy evolve in different species of life, with bodies ranging from that of an insignificant ant to that of Brahma, the constructor of the cosmos, the Pradhan. The chief cause of all causes in the impersonal vision is none other than Supreme Lord, whom one can see face to face in the internal potency. He takes the material, all-pervasive form by his inconceivable power. Although all three potencies, namely internal, external, and marginal, are essentially one in the ultimate issue, they are different in action, like electric energy, which can produce both cold and heat under different conditions. The external and marginal potencies are so called under various conditions, but in the original internal potencies there are no such conditions. Nor is it possible for the conditions of the external potency to exist in the marginal. One who is able to understand the intricacies of all these energies of the Supreme Lord can no longer remain in empiric impersonalists under the influence of a poor fund of knowledge. Verse 97, the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna enjoys himself in 6 primary expansions. His 2 manifestations are Prabhav and Vaibhav. Purport. Now the author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita turns to a description of the personality of Godhead Krishna in his innumerable expansions. The Lord primarily expands himself in 2 categories, namely Prabhav and Vaibhav. The Prabhav forms are fully potent like Shri Krishna, and the Vaibhav forms are partially potent. The Prabhav forms are manifested in relation with the potencies, but the Vaibhav form are manifested in relation with excellences. The potent Prabhav manifestations are also of 2 varieties, temporary and eternal. The Mohini, Hamsa and Shukla form are manifested only temporarily in terms of the particular age. Among the other Prabhavs who are not very famous according to the material estimation are Dhanvantari, Rishabh, Vyas, Dattatreya and Kapila. Among the Vaibhav Prakash forms are Kurma, Matsya, Nar Narayan, Varaha, Hayagriva, Vishnigarbha, Baladev, Yajna, Vibhu, Satyasen, Hari, Vaikuntha, Ajita, Vamana, Sarvabhaum, Rishabha, Vishwaksena, Dharam Setu, Sudama, Yogeshwara and Brihad Bhanu. Verse 98, his incarnations are of 2 kinds, namely partial and empowered. He appears in 2 ages, childhood and boyhood. The purport, the Vilas form are 6 in number. Incarnation are of 2 variety, namely Shakti Avesha, the empowered, and Amar Shwesha, the partial. These incarnations also come within the category of Prabhav and Vaibhav manifestations. Childhood and boyhood are 2 special features of the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna, but his permanent feature is his eternal form as an adolescent youth. The original personality of Godhead Shri Krishna is always worshipped in this eternal adolescent form. Verse 99, the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna, who is eternally an adolescent, is the primeval Lord, the source of all incarnations. He expands himself in these 6 categories of forms to establish his supremacy throughout the universe. Verse 100, in these 6 kind of forms there are innumerable varieties. Although there are many, they are all one. There is no difference between them. Purport, the personality of Godhead manifests himself in 6 different features: Prabhav, Vaibhav, empowered incarnations, Partial incarnations, childhood and boyhood. The personality of Godhead Shri Krishna, whose permanent feature is adolescence, enjoys his transcendental proclivities by performing pastimes in these six forms. In these six features, there are unlimited divisions of the personality of Godhead's forms. The jivas or living beings are differentiated parts and parcels of the Lord. They are all diversities of the one without a second, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Verse 101, the Chit Shakti, which is also called the Swarup Shakti or Antaranga Shakti, displays many varied manifestations. It sustains the kingdom of God and its paraphernalia. Verse 102, the external energy called Maya Shakti is the cause of innumerable universes with varied material potencies. Verse 103, the marginal potency which is between these two consists of the numberless living beings. These are the three principal energies which have unlimited categories and subdivisions. Purport, the internal potency of the Lord, which is called the Chit Shakti or the Antarang Shakti, exhibits variegatedness in the transcendental Vaikuntha cosmos. Besides ourselves, there are unlimited number of liberated living beings who associate with the personality of Godhead in his innumerable features. The material cosmos displays the external energy in which the conditioned living beings are provided all liberty to go back to the personality of Godhead after leaving the material tabernacle. The Shweta Vataras Upanishad 6.8 informs us Natasya Karyam Karanam Cha Vidyate Natat Samash Cha Bhyadikash Cha Drishyate Parayasa Shakti Vividhveva Shruyate Swabhaviki Jnana Bala Kriyacha. The Supreme Personality of Lord is one without a second. He has nothing to do personally, nor does he have material senses. No one is equal to him or greater than him. He has unlimited variegated potencies of different names which exist within him as an autonomous attributes and provide him full knowledge and power and pastimes. Verse 104, these are the principal manifestations and expansions of the personality of Godhead and his three energies. They are all emanations from Shri Krishna, the Transcendence. They have their existence in him. Verse 105, although the three Purushas are the shelters of all the universes, Lord Krishna is the original source of the Purushas. Verse 106, the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, is the original primeval Lord, the source of all the expansions, all the revealed scriptures except Shri Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Verse 107, Krishna, who is known as Govinda, the Supreme Controller, he has an eternal blissful spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, for he is the prime cause of all causes. This is the first verse of the 5th chapter of the Brahma Samhita. This is the famous verse. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Verse 108, you all know the conclusions of the scriptures very well. You create these logical arguments just to agitate me. Purport, a learned man who has thoroughly studied the scriptures cannot hesitate to accept Krishna as a supreme personality of Godhead. If such a man argues about this matter, certainly he must be doing so to agitate the mind of his opponents. Verse 109, the same Lord Krishna, the fountainhead of all incarnations, is known as the son of the king of Raja. He has descended personally as Lord Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Verse 110, therefore, Lord Chaitanya is a supreme absolute truth. To call him Kshirodakshay Vishnu does not add to his glory. Verse 111, by such words from the lips of a sincere devotee cannot be false. All possibilities abide in him, for he is the primeval Lord. Verse 112, all other incarnations are situated in potential form in the original body of the primeval Lord. Thus, according to one's opinion, one may address him as one of the incarnations. It is not contradictory for a devotee to call the Supreme Lord by one of the various names of his plenary expansions, because the original personality of Godhead includes all such categories. Since the plenary expansions exist within the original person, one may call him by any of these names. In Shri Chaitanya Bhagavat Madhya 6.95, Lord Chaitanya says, I was lying asleep in the ocean of milk, but I was awakened by the call of Nada, Shri Advaita Prabhu, of Nada, or is it Nada, Shri Advaita Prabhu. Here the Lord refers to his form as Kshirodakshai Vishnu. Verse 113, some say that Shri Krishna is directly Naranarayan, others say that he is directly Vaman. Verse 114, some say that Krishna is the incarnation of Kshirodakshai Vishnu. None of these statements is impossible. Such is as correct as the others. Purport: the Laghu Bhagavat Amrita 5.383 says, Ata eva purnadau kechin nara sakhatmatam mahendra nujatam kechit kshirabdhi shaitam sahasra shirshatam kechid vaikunthanathatam bruyuh krishnasya munayas tad anugamina. According to the intimate relationships between Sri Krishna and the Primary Lord and his devotees, the Puranas describe him by various names. Sometimes he is called Narayan, sometimes Upendra, that is Vaman, the younger brother of Indra, king of heaven, and sometimes called Kshirodakshai Vishnu. Sometimes he is called the thousand-hooded Sheshnag, and sometimes the Lord of Vaikuntha. Verse 115, some call him Hari, or the Narayan of the transcendental world. Everything is possible in Krishna, for he is the primeval Lord. 116, I offer my obeisances unto the feet of all who hear or read this discourse. Kindly hear with attention to the conclusion of all these statements. Purport: prostrating himself at the feet of his readers, the author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita entreats them in all humility to hear with rapt attention these conclusive arguments regarding the absolute truth. One should not fail to hear such arguments, for only by such knowledge one can perfectly know Krishna. Verse 117, this is a long verse and we will continue our reading from here onwards next time. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.